Hi friends, welcome back to the YouTube channel IASessay. Today we come back with another essay topic that was asked in UPSC 2018 mains examination. And the topic is, a people that values its privileges above its principles loses both. Friends, first we show you how to brainstorm on the topic and make the structure. And then we give you the actual essay which we have written on the topic. Friends, if you want PDF copy of this essay, just write your email number and your WhatsApp number in the comment section below the video and we'll send you the essay immediately. But my strong suggestion to you is, please do watch the video ahead and understand how we did the brainstorming of the topic. Because if you pick up the technique of brainstorming, then you can apply it to any topic on which you are writing an essay. And I think the best way to understand the technique of brainstorming is by seeing yourself how it is done for the topics that are asked in UPSC. Now this topic which we have taken today is one of the tough topics that was asked this year. And if you see how simple it is to brainstorm ideas and make structure for this topic, you will gain confidence to do that for any other topic which might seem difficult in the examination hall. Now let's start with the first step of brainstorming, and that is to find the central idea of the topic. Now this topic has three aspects, friends. One is a people, second is privileges above its principles, and third is loses both. So what this topic basically says is, any group of people, whether it's a family or it's people belonging to organization or people belonging to country or people belonging to world, any group of people which is more interested in enjoying the privileges and less concerned with living up to the principles will lose principles as well as privileges. So basically the message of the topic is, if people abandon principles, privileges will be lost. Now this is the central theme of your topic. Your whole essay has to be focused on this idea. Basically you have to establish this idea. Now how do we establish any idea? We establish any idea by proving that idea in different contexts. Now what are the contexts in which we can prove this topic here? The most suited context will be organization, then country, and then world. Now if you can show that when people of organization abandon principles, the organization loses its privileges. Similarly, if people of a country give up their principles, they lose their privileges. And when people of the world, they give up their principles, they lose the privileges as one people. If we are able to prove that, then we would have established the topic. Now, if you add introduction and conclusion to these three contexts, you get the broad structure in which you can write this essay. Now, once we have known the broad structure, now we can start the brainstorming at a deeper level. We can exactly find the ideas which we can write in these 5 headings which we have given to the broad structure in which we will write our essay. First comes the introduction. In introduction, basically we have to establish the relationship between the privileges and the principles. We can do it in many ways. We can use quotations, we can use incidents, we can use stories. Here today we are using a very simple and sweet story, which we will see when we give you the essay ahead. Then comes organization. Here we have to establish the relationship between privileges and the principles. Now what are the privileges that any organization has? The basic privileges that any organization has is the customers it has and the profit it earns. Now, what can be the relationship between the principles and these privileges? Now, the relationship is very simple. When there is an organization which is principled, which is honestly following the principles which it stands for, it generates a credibility or goodwill. Based on this credibility and goodwill, the customers are loyal. They become in a way agents which spread good word about the organization, and it attracts more customers, more profits. So relationship is simple. Organization which is principled, has goodwill, has credibility, has trust, and when it has all these things, it continues to survive and thrive. To explain this concept, you have to give examples. Examples can be many. It can be the examples from private sector, for example the Enron fiasco, the fiasco of Satyam, or if you want to take example from the organizations which are more relevant in democracy, you can take example of media organizations. Now we have to discuss the topic in context of a country. We'll take this topic in context of India. Now, what are the biggest privileges we have? The biggest privileges we have today are the independence we have, the democratic system we have, and various fundamental and constitutional rights that we enjoy. Now we have to show relationship of these privileges with the principles which we as people of this country have always followed. Now, how do we show the relationship of these principles of these privileges with the principles? First, we show that the privileges of independence and democracy which we have today is the result of principles which inspired our struggle of independence. Then, in second aspect, we will show that not only we have gained these privileges on the basis of strength of these principles, we have also been able to preserve these privileges in these last 70 years of independence because we followed principles. Which principles now? In the present context, these principles will be the constitutional principles. The principles which our constitution makers gave on the eve of independence, we have followed those principles in the last 70 years, and that is why we have been able to preserve and strengthen the privileges of independence and democracy which we enjoy today. And then we can write in context of future that in future we need to live up to these principles so that we can pass on these privileges to the future generations, right? Then we discuss this topic in context of the world, and we try to show again that if as people of a world we do not follow the principles, we will lose our privileges. So first thing we have to show is that whole world is one people, and that is why we have one future. That is the basic idea we'll give. Then we'll talk about what are the privileges we have as people of one world. The privileges are that we live on a planet which is the only one to have life, right? Then the whole peace and prosperity of the whole world is another privilege which whole world wants to attain, wants to preserve. Now, to preserve these privileges, what are the principles which we all as people of the world have to follow? These are the principles of international cooperation. Where do we find such international cooperation principles? These principles are found in charters of United Nations, in international treaties, and goals which we as world community have fixed for us. For example, Millennium Development Goals, Sustainable Development Goals, etc. What we will show is that if we do not follow these principles of international cooperation, we all are bound to suffer because we all face common threats of environment and nuclear war, right? Then in conclusion, what we do is, since we have built up the essay from organizational level to country level, from country level to world level, so our conclusion will also be set in the international context, and we'll summarize our message and use the same quote which is the topic of our essay. So now we have our structure ready. I'll give you the essay now. Let me start with introduction. A people that value its privileges above its principles loses both. In introduction, we have given a story. It goes like this. An old folk tale goes like this. A farmer and his wife lived in a village. One day, a mystic gave them a goose that would lay golden egg every day, provided they fed her and kept her safe. The farmer sold the egg daily and became richer day by day. After some time, the farmer got lazy and greedy. He didn't want the responsibility of feeding and taking care of the goose. He just wanted the golden eggs. So he shunned the principle. Assuming that the goose carried many eggs within her, he cut her with a knife. The farmer lost both the goose and the golden egg forever. The simple story has a very profound message. When principles are abundant, privileges vanish too. It is as true for this imaginary story as it is for the fate of individuals, survival of the organizations, destiny of the nations, and even future of the world. Let us see how. So what I have done here, through the help of a story, I have told the examiner that I have understood the topic that when principles are abundant, privileges vanish. And in the next paragraph, I have told him that I'll divide my essay into organizational context, context of the country, and context of the world. Now I move to second aspect of my essay, that is organizations. Look at the subheading which I have given. Organizations, principle, make or mar organizations. So I have given the essence of my discussion which I am going to do in future. Let me read it out to you. Principles are the basis of all goodwill, trust and credibility that any organization enjoys. Without this credibility, organization cannot thrive or even survive. Times have repeatedly shown that when principles are breached, even the tallest organization fall like a pack of cards. So I have given here the message which the essay topic says, that people who prefer privileges over principles lose both principles as well as privileges. What I have told is, if any organization abandons its principles, it not only loses the principles, it also fails as an organization and falls like a pack of cards. And here I give the example of Enron. The infamous fiasco of business giants Enron Corporation and Arthur Andersen is still fresh in the world's memory. Arthur Andersen was always known for outstanding business ethics. During the early years, it is reputed that Andersen himself was approached by an executive to sign off on accounts containing flawed accounting, or else face the loss of a major client. Andersen had famously replied that there was not enough money in the city of Chicago to make him do it. For many years, Andersen's motto was "Think straight, talk straight." It was such principles which made Arthur Andersen the most trusted name in the field of auditing and one of the biggest multinationals in the world. When the scandal came out in 2001, in which energy giant Enron was found to have falsely reported billions of dollars in revenue through accounting fraud, Andersen's performance as an auditor came under intense scrutiny. In case of Enron, Arthur Andersen allowed greed of fees to overrule the strong business ethics tradition of their founder. In one go, both Enron and Arthur Andersen lost all their credibility and thus all their clients. Enron had to declare itself bankrupt, and Arthur Andersen had to surrender their license and right to practice, effectively putting the firm out of business. The shunning of principles of corporate governance and business ethics ended the biggest and most powerful organizations of their fields in no time. This applies irrespective of times and context. It is the principles that form the basis of privileges that any organization earns and continues to enjoy. So what I have told through that examples, that when any organization gives up its principles, it loses its privileges. Now I have given another example of media. In an examination, only any one example will suffice, right? So I'll just read out the media one. Though applicable for all organizations of people in all spheres, in context of democracy, the importance of valuing principles is most strikingly visible in context of media organizations. Media holds a privileged position in democracy. It questions government and contributes to making of public opinion. History galore with examples where a single news in the newspaper by one journalist has brought down the governments. When media published any news exposing governments, people used to sit up and take notice. Either governments answered or were held answerable. Today, media has a wider reach, but its influence is under question. Newspapers reach all the corners of the country. Television has 24-hour news channels with excellent computer graphics and expert panels to explain the events and give views. Even mobile phones have apps delivering news on the go. But still, the impact which news makes on public opinion about governments and issues facing the society seems to have drastically reduced. The reason for this difference lies in credibility of the media today. Media is facing huge crisis of credibility in present times, and that's because it has largely shunned the high standards and ethical principles of journalism in the mad race for TRPs and profits. It is plagued by sensationalism, fake news propagation, drumming down the content, influence of ideological biases of honors, paid news phenomenon, etc. As someone summed it up well, journalists might be feared by individuals today, but not respected by the masses. Media shunned its principles, and it lost its moral power and privilege as a real instrument of democracy to a great extent. This also reinforces the fact that organizations or people who value privileges over principles lose both. Now, in context of organization, we have proved our topic. Let us shift to the country. And in country, I told you we are discussing India. India, Principles 1. India privileges. Only principles can ensure that privileges survive. This is my subheading, which gives the message to the examiner. What I am trying to say is that whatever privileges we have today were achieved on the strength of principles, and in future also we need to respect these principles if we want to ensure these privileges. This is my message, and my essay will explain how this is true. The story of India is the testimony of how principles determine destiny of the nations and its people. It shows how the principles win privileges for people and then preserve them for all. Independence and democracy, these are the two biggest privileges we take as a given today as citizens of India. However, these privileges were earned through the principles that inspired our struggle for freedom. These principles were to rise above all the differences of caste, creed, region or religion and putting the country above everything else. Mahatma Gandhi emphasized the principles of truth and non-violence. These principles required great sacrifices, collective as well as individual, and out of millions of such sacrifices emerged the privilege for us to be born in an independent democratic country. In hindsight, we can say that the struggle for independence succeeded because principles were valued, were lived by, and were kept above everything else by our freedom fighters. It was the strength of these principles that a nation of impoverished, largely illiterate, but determined people could defeat the mighty British. The principles won us privileges of independence and democracy, and only principles could let us hold on to them in the last 7 decades since independence. Winning the privileged independence was just half the battle. To hold on to it and to make democracy work for fulfilling the aspirations of millions were a Herculean task, to say the least. All over the world, there existed vocal prophets of doom and gloom who predicted that neither freedom nor democracy nor socialistic pattern of society would survive long, that Indian political system would collapse sooner or later, and that Indian Union will not survive and nation state would disintegrate into linguistic and ethnic fragments. Their misgivings were not entirely without reasons. Diversity of groups, interests, languages, religions, cultures, customs, etc. challenged even the idea of one India from taking root. The grim realities of extreme poverty, widespread illiteracy, huge lack of resources, a large population to feed stared at us. Hostile neighbors inflicted wars on us. We suffered the waves of communalism, Naxalism, terrorism, and even demands for secession in few parts of the country. Still, we proudly stand today celebrating our 71 years of independence as one nation and as the world's largest democracy. In this tough and exciting journey since independence, what has held us together even through the darkest hours of adversities is the constitutional principles given to us by our founding fathers. Constitutional principles are the real source and protectors of privileges which we enjoy today as a part of Indian polity, society or economy. Whenever we have lived up to the constitutional principles, our democracy and nation has emerged stronger despite the challenges. And whenever we have failed to uphold the principles, our privileges have also come under threat. The infamous national emergency imposed in 1975 is just a case in point. The emergency took away many rights of the people and democracy became a sham. But the country could withstand the emergency because people stood by the democratic ethos and principles espoused by the Constitution. Today again, our future beholds for us many opportunities and many challenges as a nation. If we have to preserve the privileges we have earned, we need to recommit ourselves to the principles which our founding fathers have enumerated for us in our Constitution. If we just keep enjoying the privileges provided by the Constitution and not live by the principles, it won't be long that we lose both. If as a people, we just keep enjoying the fundamental rights that democratic polity gives us, but not value the principle and fundamental duty of casting vote during elections, then the democracy will eventually become meaningless. If as a people, we only want the privilege of economic growth and world-class infrastructure, but not value the principles of honestly paying our taxes, the economy will eventually cease to grow at the desired rate. If as a people, we want to enjoy the privilege of living in safe and secure society based on rule of law, but keep breaking the rules and laws when it suits our personal interests, eventually the rule of law will cease to exist for all. Our preamble declares that it is we, the people, who have given ourselves the Constitution. Hence, we have not only bestowed the privileges upon ourselves, but have also ourselves enumerated principles which we will uphold. Hence, it is upon us as a people to value these principles if we want our future generations to enjoy the privileges that we have inherited from our forefathers. Because it goes without saying that a people that values the privileges over principles loses both. And this great country, which is home for 1/6 humanity, can't afford to lose any of them. Now we come to the world context. World, shared future through shared principles. The world is one global village and all of us are one people. As Maha-Upanishad also says, Vasudeva Kutumbakam, the world is one family, and as people of one world, we share one future. This statement is more true now than ever before. Technology has made the world so interconnected today that the differences of distance, time and space have become irrelevant. Further, technology has given such tremendous power in hands of few that whole world can be destroyed by even one irresponsible action. The total nuclear weapons on the earth are sufficient to destroy the world many times over. As Albert Einstein famously alluded, I know not with what weapons World War III will be fought, but the World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. The premise is that the World War III, if it ever happened, will collapse the society back to the Stone Age because everything would be destroyed. Also, the common threats of environment degradation, climate change and international terrorism, nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction threaten us all. Hence we, as people of the world, have a shared destiny and we need common principles to value and live by if we want to coexist and prosper as one people. Over time, leaders around the world have come together at international forums like UN, World Bank, World Economic Forum, regional groups, etc. and have evolved the accepted principles of international cooperation. These principles exist in form of UN charters, international treaties, commonly determined goals like Millennium Development Goals and Sustainable Development Goals, etc. When these principles are discarded for protecting narrow selfish privileges by a few, the entire world gets exposed to great dangers. For instance, a year back in 2017, the United States of America withdrew from the Paris Agreement for climate change mitigation, stating that it undermines its economy. Being a superpower economy and one of the highest contributors to the world greenhouse gases emissions, the withdrawal was a huge setback to the world's effort to save the planet from dangers of global warming. Then again recently in October 2018, the US President announced that they'll leave the arms control treaty with Russia. This can restart the nuclear arms race of the Cold War times and takes world a step closer to the danger of nuclear war or potential mishappenings like the famous Cuban Missile Crisis. Now we come to conclusion. Whether it is the threat of nuclear war or the other global challenges like environmental degradation and climate change, the consequences are shared and fatal. We, as a people, have the privilege of inhabiting the only planet known to support life. We must realize that if we don't value the principles of international cooperation today, then we can't even preserve the rightful privilege of our future generations to be born on this beautiful planet. Hence, it is time that the whole world, including the US, remembers the wise words which Dwight E. Eisenhower famously said in his inaugural address when he was sworn in as the US President. A people who values privileges over principle soon loses both. So that completes our essay. Friends, if you want the PDF copy of this essay, you just write your email address or WhatsApp number in the comment section below the video. We'll send it to you immediately. And I hope that the essay and the brainstorming technique given here will help you to write better essays in the future. All the best, guys. And I again request you to subscribe to this YouTube channel IASessay if you want a complete and best preparation for your IAS paper. All the best. Thank you. Take care. Bye.